In this video, I'm going to share with you a recent trip I took to see Burg Eltz, the inspiration behind the Beauty and the Beast castle, which is near Moselkern in Germany. What made this trip special is that it was very short, we only stayed overnight, and we didn't drive or ride in a car for the entire trip. So from our arrival train to our departure train, we just walked everywhere we wanted to go. So you can see here that just after exiting the Moselkern train station, we started to see these signs that pointed in the direction of Burg Eltz. These signs were frequently placed, and they made it super easy for us to navigate without having to use our phones. And that was really nice because it made it super easy to just relax and enjoy the scenery along the walk. One landmark that I really loved was this old abandoned factory. I know some people go crazy for abandoned buildings, and I'm not usually one of them, but something about this building just made it stand out to me as a really beautiful piece of the scenery. We took this trip in early April, and even though it was pretty cold this weekend, as you can see, the grass was already green, which made the whole walk just very pretty. So as we followed the signs for Burg Eltz, the route took us right through a little neighborhood until we came to this sign, where we have the option to continue along the road or to take the Fußweg or footpath. And of course, we chose the footpath, which wound through the forest right alongside the river, which is a really nice sort of idyllic little countryside walk. I did my best to capture the beauty of this path for the video, but honestly, my GoPro just didn't do it justice. So if you can, I highly recommend visiting so you can see it for yourself. And here we are arriving at the Landhotel Ringelsteiner Mühle. Please forgive my horrendous pronunciation. The first thing we noticed was the construction on a new building right in front of the restaurant. Sadly, I forgot to ask about the plans for the new building, but my guess is that it will be the new home of the restaurant since the current one is quite small. As you can see, we initially bypassed these buildings in front and headed for the building labeled Hotel. But when we got there, we saw this sign. So yeah, at the time of my visit, the reception desk was in the restaurant and it was a very small space, so it was quite crowded in there. That being said, the hotel staff was very welcoming and super patient with our terrible German. Many people will just switch to English once they realize they're speaking with an American, so I really appreciated the opportunity to practice my German. I am fairly certain that this was because most of the staff didn't speak English, so if you don't know any German at all, I definitely suggest learning some before you stay here. Here's a look at the room we stayed in. It was nothing fancy, but it was clean and functional. I think any American who's traveled abroad will appreciate this. It had fully enclosing shower doors, which is just nice because it keeps the bathroom floor from getting all wet when you take a shower. And of course, it had a really nice view of the mountainside. After we'd rested for a bit in the hotel room, we set out on the trail toward Burg Eltz. When I was preparing for this trip, I didn't see any descriptions or videos of what this trail was actually like, so we set out not really knowing what to expect. The paved road ended pretty soon, and we walked on this gravel path until we came to these stairs, which were the last man-made thing that we saw for a while. If you'll notice these stickers on the railing, and then when I get to the top, you will see them on a tree. These are marking the name of the trail that we're on right now. I later learned that this is just a small part of a much larger trail network that allows you to hike all the way from Trier to Cologne. And yeah, I just thought that was really cool. I'm not really to that level of hiking yet, but if you are, I will leave a link in the description box so you can find out more. So the trail proper was packed dirt with stone, and it wound alongside a mountain, climbing fairly steadily the whole way to the castle. There were many large protruding rocks, and at times the path became very narrow and or slanted. And the higher we climbed, the steeper the drop-off directly to our right became. Right now, it's not very steep, but you will see later in the video why this made me quite nervous at times.
Oh, it's getting rockier and rockier.
Another thing that made me nervous was what appeared to be a dark cave entrance. My family wanted to check it out, but I pleaded with them to nope out of there with me.
I am. No. No, you're not.
But really, overall, this was a very pleasant hike. I would describe the trail as moderately difficult, and the scenery was absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, there's a bench. Daddy took me showing a jump tub.
When I came to this sign, I thought I was nearly there, but I think we walked for about 10 more minutes before we caught a glimpse of Burg Eltz. And as you can see, our first sight of the castle was through the forest trees. It was such a surreal experience to see this beautiful medieval castle after walking through the forest for at least half an hour. Yeah, it almost felt like we were in a fairy tale. It was just so cool. After we'd admired the castle from a distance, we crossed this bridge and then climbed all of these stairs. At the top of the stairs, we were finally at the street-level entrance, which is also the approach for anyone who decides to drive to the castle. Even though it was a gloomy, overcast day, the castle was absolutely breathtaking, and it felt so good to finally arrive after all of that walking. We got our tickets and tour information at this booth just inside. On the booth, you can see these signs that stated that dogs, photos, and filming were prohibited inside the castle. Even though I did see plenty of people taking photos inside, I chose to respect the rule, so you won't see any footage of the interior of the castle in this video. However, I did try to get plenty of footage of the exterior for you. I also just wanted to quickly mention some things about the dog rule. So I'd initially planned to bring my dog on this trip. I even bought her a train ticket and cleared it with the hotel. But when I emailed Burg Eltz and asked whether dogs were allowed inside or on the grounds, they told me no, and that exceptions could only be made for guide dogs. And because of this information, I actually chose to leave my dog with a sitter at the last minute and had to get her train ticket refunded. However, while I was at this castle, I saw plenty of dogs on the grounds, even inside the walls. So it's actually perfectly fine to bring your dog and walk around the castle grounds to admire the view. But the information I received was accurate for the interior of the castle. So that means that if you choose to bring your dog, you might miss out on the guided tour, the treasury, and the gift shop. But you wouldn't miss out on lunch since there was plenty of outdoor seating available at the cafe. The menu was standard German fast food with wine and beer, of course. I had the Gemüse frikadelle, which was the only vegetarian dish available. As you can see, the currywurst and chicken nuggets were buried under pumice. And yeah, our little seating nook was very cozy thanks to this outdoor heater. And we had a very pleasant lunch before we headed to the main courtyard, which is the starting point for the guided tours. And when you're done admiring the courtyard, you can head through this little doorway which leads out onto this little terrace where you can admire the countryside. When we were done at Burg Eltz, we headed back to the hotel where we found these very elegantly placed tables in the dining room. The menu was quite a bit fancier than I expected based on the room, and the prices matched. That said, I highly recommend the restaurant because everything was delicious and the service was excellent. I had the trout with salad and potatoes, but if you are a vegetarian, there were plenty of meatless options as well. The next morning, we found the landscape had been transformed into a winter wonderland. It was a very pleasant surprise for me since we'd brought warm clothes and we didn't have to worry about driving in the snow. The hotel breakfast buffet was pretty small and simple, but we could order eggs cooked however we liked, and these scrambled eggs were the best I've had yet at a German hotel. And then we checked out of our room. I think it's a testament to the hotel's casual atmosphere that we left our room nearly 2 hours later than checkout, and no one said a word to us. This is an adorable little guest book, and here I am using my very limited German to sign. Feel free to tell me all about my grammatical and or spelling errors in the comments. It was so cool to just step outside and see how everything had been completely transformed by the snow. Honestly, we were pretty mesmerized by the landscape this morning. And here I am telling my kid to film the frosted mountainside.
In the water, yeah. Really good.
So yeah, then we headed back along the footpath to Moselkern. We were absolutely transfixed by the snowy landscape, and it really made the return journey just magical. It felt like we'd fallen asleep in one world and woken up in another.
Look at them! They just glide across the water, basically.
On our way, we stopped at this little shop, which was nestled down in the neighborhood right across from this little park. I highly recommend this shop, which is called Dagmars Marmeladen. The woman who ran the shop was so sweet and patient with us despite the language barrier. She kept giving my kid free sweets, and he walked out of there with a bag of strawberry marshmallows, free of charge. We did buy some apple butter, strawberry jam, and some wine. I haven't tasted any of this yet, but I am happy to see that it was made with love. So this is that abandoned factory that I loved so much, and on our way back into the town, we actually decided to walk right up to it to get a closer look. And when we did, we noticed a sign stating that it is a rentable photo shoot space. It seems like a really cool location, so if you're a photographer, you might want to check it out. Soon after we passed the abandoned factory, we arrived in the downtown area, and we just so happened to be passing the church when the 12 o'clock bell started ringing. Even though this winery didn't seem open, we decided to go ahead and ring the bell, just in case they were. And seconds after we rang it, a nice lady opened the door and sold us a bottle of wine.
Cheers!
Our plans for this morning before our train ride were simply to explore Moselkern, do a bit of shopping, and maybe grab a coffee. However, aside from the two aforementioned shops, we could find no other open businesses. We even found this billboard featuring recommended businesses, including the Kleines Cafe House, which, according to the posted information, should have been open. But when we headed over there, we saw that it wasn't even open for the season yet. So, if you'd like to take advantage of the restaurants and shops in Moselkern, I'd recommend planning your visit a little closer to the middle of the season. If you prefer to avoid the crowds, however, I highly recommend visiting early in the season, like we did. At the time this video was recorded, the Burg Eltz season began April 1st, which was the very day that we visited. One of my favorite things to do when I travel is just to walk around and look for new and interesting things. A perfect example of this kind of thing is this tiny little alleyway where I saw this cool painting displayed. And I was so happy with this trip in particular because we were able to avoid driving or riding in a car the entire time. This is great not only because it's more environmentally friendly, it's healthier, it's cheaper, and in my opinion, makes for a more relaxing vacation. There's just something so freeing about being able to go wherever your legs can take you without having to worry about taking care of a car. But if you do need to use a car, there is a taxi stand just to the left when you exit the Moselkern train station. And now we've come to the end of the adventure. I made this video to document my trip, and I'm sharing it in the hopes that it might help someone who is planning a trip to this area. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions and if you have any suggestions for a similar trip on which I can bring my dog.